Thanks for joining us on Tandem Radio for a very special segment, By Design, focused on helping you understand how God designed you so that you may be healthy and productive in fulfilling God's purposes in your life for many years to come. Now let's join our host, health expert and public speaker, Dr. James Proodian.
Hello, welcome to the By Design radio program. My name is Dr. James Proodian of Proodian Healthcare and ProodianHealthcare.com, where health literacy is the key to longevity. And as long as God has us on this side of eternity, my show is designed to educate you and your families to feel better, function better, and live as many quality disease-free years as possible. We are in a nutritional series, picking up where we left off last week. We were talking about my friend Bob and the industrialization of food and inflammation, and I'll get you guys caught up. First, let's do our just our quick Bible verse that we do every week, which is from Luke 1:37. For with God nothing is impossible, and I feel as though nothing is impossible in education as well. The better educated we are, the better decisions we make, which lead to positive lifestyle changes that all of us could utilize for ourselves and our families. And it starts with understanding many of the factors and many of the situations that we're up against weekly in terms of where we're shopping, the types of foods we're buying. It's already been pre-planned and pre-programmed that the foods we're eating are not very good for us. Our last show focused on the fact that 90% of the American food budget is spent on processed inflammatory foods. Now, I don't want you to take my word for it. There's plenty of great authors out there who have written about inflammation. And I gave you one of their resources, Time Magazine, The Secret Killer. And it was published, I believe, in 2004 or 2006, where Time did an entire edition on inflammation and the impact of inflammation on our health, the morbidity, the mortality, based upon the highly inflammatory foods that, no, not God designed, man designed. Man has taken our food into the laboratory, redesigned it, repackaged it, give it longer shelf lives, and has made it cheaper. And the cheapening of our food has made it to cause inflammation. So the inflammation and the impact of inflammation on our health is extremely important, because inflammation is the precursor to those diseases. So where we left off was that inflammation inside the body puts 25 to 35 million Americans at risk for heart disease and strokes. Now, heart disease and stroke is killing 50% of Americans today. So 1 out of 2 people running around are going to die from this condition. So that's how important inflammation is, because inside an arterial wall, we do not want an inflammatic state. The inflammation inside of an arterial wall allows the plaquing process to occur more rapidly. So obesity, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, all of these types of chronic illnesses that are highly preventable start off in this inflammation soup, if you will. And what we want to do is discuss why and what we're going to go do to reverse that inflammation inside of our body. Inflammation is far more dangerous than high cholesterol. High cholesterol is not as, it's an important conversation to have, but right now we want to make the point that inflammation is far more dangerous than that, because along with the overconsumption of refined processed flour and sugar in our westernized eating style, we're most guilty of consuming copious amounts of the wrong types of fats. Now, God gave us great fats, like we just talked about in the last show. We have olive oil, we have flaxseed oil, and things that are made for us, that fats are very healthy for us. They're needed. The first 3 programs I did on nutrition, that you could go back and take a look at the archives, was that protein, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, minerals, and water are the 5 essentials to life. We need fat, but we don't need the bad type of fat. The wrong types of fat cause us to be obese, cause type 2 diabetes, cause a host of the chronic illness. So we want to be eating the right types of fat. To give you an example of this, 1 small bag of French fries is equivalent to 10 grams of hydrogenated fat. Now, that hydrogenated fat Bob made in the laboratory. He made hydrogenated corn oil. There was a process where a man had to go to a lab and actually create this food. And this food that was created now makes up 90% of the oils that we're consuming in America. Now, that 1 small bag of French fries stays in our body 212 days. Why? because our cellular system doesn't recognize hydrogenated fat. It doesn't recognize trans fats. These are foreign to us. These are foreign invaders. So our bodies are designed to assimilate, process, and digest foods. Well, our cells are looking at this stuff and saying, what is this? I don't know what to do with this. So it stores it inside the cell, in this case for 212 days. That allows the bad fat, this denatured trans fat, to alter our DNA. It allows things to happen within the cell that promote cancer, for instance. So this is why hydrogenated corn oil, okay, or for instance, high fructose corn syrup, which was also made in a laboratory, I believe in Japan in 1980. These types of product were not designed for human consumption, but they're cheap. They're a lot less expensive to make, for instance, soda out of. Okay, I was reading somewhere that the soda industry, when they converted from sugar to high fructose corn syrup, saved one-third the cost of a can of soda went down because of the inexpensive nature to high fructose corn syrup. So if you were running a cola industry and you could save one-third off your bottom line by converting from sugar to high fructose corn syrup, these are people who have to rely upon profit and loss statements. Now, fructose, high fructose corn syrup, is sweeter than sugar. So you would think they would use less than sugar in their sodas, but they actually used more. So that's a show that's coming up. I'm going to cover soda probably in my next show. But for today, back to Bob in that laboratory, mixing things together. I see him with these beakers and these Bunsen burners, creating food, creating a food supply that was already made by God, manufacturing food in a way that our genetics, our cellular representation, or epigenetics, which is shows I've done prior, we then express disease based upon what we're putting into ourselves. And that's the horrific downside, the horrific effect of man-made processed food. So our diet is loaded full of these omega-6 oils and trans fats, and our cells are working to keep up with this oversaturation of this toxicity. And these omega-6 fats result in this inflammatory reaction in our body. Our cells have the inability to function normally. Okay? So if our cells, all 20, 30 trillion of them, are in a constant state of inflammation, they're being bombarded, 90% of the biochemical material coming into us is inflammatory, how do we expect to be healthy? How do we expect to produce energy? How do we expect our cholesterol levels to be normal? We want a thin waistline? We want to feel an abundance of energy when we wake up in the morning and not have pain all over our body? You know what it feels like to have a swollen ankle, a sprained ankle? That's inflammation. Think about that inflammation in your ankle wrapped around every one of your cells. That's the impact of omega-6 oils. That's the detrimental impact of these man-made oils and fats in our society. You may want to read, if you're interested in an authority on fats, a woman by the name of Ing, Dr. Ing, E-N-I-G. Dr. Ing is a world-renowned authority. She wrote a great book called Know Your Fats, amongst other materials. You could look her up online, or you could Google her. So back to the omega-6 oils. Here's our body now is producing this inflammation. 90% of the food budget is inflammatory, and the society is running around asking, why are we so sick? Why are we so sick? Well, let's start here with the inflammation. This omega-6 produces inflammatory chemicals. They deaden the cell's sensitivity to the necessary chemicals and hormones that they're required to make. So here's this cell. A cell's necessary to make its own specialized set of chemicals and hormones, but it can't do its work because it's wrapped up in this inflammation soup that's wrapped around that cell. And no wonder we're getting so fat and have diabetes. Our cells could no longer be sensitive to the insulin that makes them, for instance, use sugar normally. So if our cells, which have this very delicate balance between insulin and sugar, is wrapped up in this inflammation, that cell doesn't know how much, for instance, insulin to produce. Okay, it's deadened. And it's deadened because of the primary cause, this inflammation model. So 90% of Americans are eating this way. The typical diet is mostly grain, sugar, fatty acids, trans fats, high fat meat. We're substantially deficient in fruits and vegetables. Those poor farmers out there, I love you to death. Those co-op farmers, organic farmers, our plates need to be filled with fruits and vegetables. God-given organic fruits and vegetables, and staying away from this man-made meat, man-made product. Because I don't know about you, if you go for a walk around the mall, I see a lot of inflamed, swollen-looking, overweight people, not very flexible, not very mobile, not full of energy, bad skin, low sex drive, hairs falling out, just not in good physical shape. And most of that deconditioning is an advanced aging process caused by these man-made foods, prone to osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, chronic pain, and all of the autoimmune diseases. So many of them are ushered in because of this state. Now, this increase of inflammatory chemicals in the body relates to stress. So our body is under stress when we're in this inflammatory state, and so it produces more cortisol. Go back to my stress shows. I forget what weeks they're on, but we discussed cortisol. Remember, everything I do is connecting the dots. This is a curriculum that I'm laying out here. This is foundational stuff so you could connect dots between inflammation and cortisol, for instance. And cortisol is very, very important because this is a vicious cycle that goes on and on and on. This week, let's avoid whole fat dairy, fatty meat, fried food, fast food, snack food, processed food. Let's get rid of Bob. Let's take Bob out of our kitchens. Stop shopping for Bob's food. Let's move Bob down the road. We're done with Bob. Let's get back to God's food. 90% of the food budget, remember, is inflammatory Bob-made food. These shows are designed to really wake up everybody because we're living, hopefully, not in that example of not being aware of our surroundings. You've been listening to the By Design radio program. I'm Dr. James Proodian. Thank you for joining me for this episode. I wish you a blessed week, a wonderful week, and a healthy week. Be well.
You've been listening to By Design with Dr. James Proodian of Proodian Healthcare. To learn more, visit us at tandemradio.com, that's tandemradio.com, or on Facebook. And don't forget to email us with your questions. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, hope you have a healthy week, and we look forward to you joining us next time for more fantastic insights from Dr. James Proodian on By Design, a special production of Tandem Radio.